Hey, everybody, we are going to talk about Social Security today. We're going to talk about some good news for a change that the cost of living adjustment in 2026 might end up being higher than initially thought. Now, it's good news or bad news depending on how you look at it. It's more money in the pockets of retirees, but that also means costs could be going up a little bit more than expected as well. We're going to dive into all the numbers. Before we do, please take a minute and click subscribe to my channel if you don't already. I cover Social Security very often. And please check out the link you see on your screen, fool.com/Frankel. Get a message from my sponsor, The Motley Fool. You can get the top 10 stocks to buy right now for free. It is the best way to support this work I'm doing on YouTube. Again, fool.com/Frankel. So let me share my screen real quick. 3, 2, 1. So the headline news is that inflation has been hotter than expected. We just saw two different inflation reports in the past week. The first one, Consumer Price Index, the CPI. This is the number that the cost of living adjustment is actually based on, and it was significantly higher than experts had thought it was going to be. For January, CPI data showed that inflation was 0.5% month over month. That is versus expectations of 0.3%, so 0.2 of a percentage point higher. On an annualized basis, the inflation rate is 3%. They were expecting to see 2.9%. Even when it comes to core CPI, which takes out things like food and energy, so we can't just blame this on eggs and things like that, the increase was still higher than expected, 0.4% month over month versus 0.3%. The second one we saw was called the Producer Price Index, and this is not what's used to determine the cost of living adjustment, but this is what the Federal Reserve uses when, this is one of their preferred inflation measures when determining how much to raise or lower interest rates. So this shows a slightly better story. This is a little more encouraging. The PPI, as it's known, increased 0.4% month over month in January, just 0.1% higher than expected. But when we take out those volatile food and energy costs, core PPI was only up 0.3%, and that was exactly what we expected to see. So generally speaking, inflation is higher than expected. Not by a ton, but especially in the ways that matter for the cost of living adjustment. So is this inflation bad news for seniors or good news for seniors? We'll get what it means for the cost. We'll get to what it means for the COLA in just a little bit. But there's two kind of contradicting things for seniors here. Number one is that shelter or housing costs were the biggest driver of inflation. They were up 0.4% year over year. Healthcare costs were down 0.5% year over year in the PPI data that tracks that. Both of those have a disproportional impact on seniors. Seniors tend to spend more as a percentage of their income on housing than the general population does. And they also tend to spend a lot more on healthcare for obvious reasons as they get older. So, some good and bad in there. So what does this mean for the 2026 cost of living adjustment? So the Senior Citizens League, which regularly puts out estimates of what the cost of living adjustment could be, now estimates that the cost of living adjustment for next year will be 2.3%. That's down from the 2.5% adjustment retirees just got in January. And it's higher than the previous estimate that the Senior Citizens League put out, which was for 2.1%. So you might be thinking to yourself, well, if inflation by CPI data was 3% year over year in January, why are they saying it's only going to be 2.3%? And basically, it assumes that inflation is going to fall throughout the year. That's kind of their baseline assumption. Now, that may or may not actually happen, but that's what this assumption is, or that's what this estimate is pricing in. So we won't know the actual 2026 cost of living adjustment for a little while now, until October. Reason being is that we don't know, none of the data that will determine the actual adjustment is out yet in terms of inflation. It's not the full year inflation. It's not that they take all 12 months and average them together. The cost of living adjustment is based only on third quarter CPI data. So July, August, and September are the only months that matter. So we don't know anything yet for sure. We should know the actual 2026 number in mid-October. As soon as the September CPI data is out, which usually happens about 2 weeks into October, we will know the exact cost of living adjustment. But once we see some actual numbers from July and August, a better picture will start to emerge. So my prediction, to sum this up, so remember that inflation data can change rapidly, and there are a lot of what I would call unusual moving parts in the economy right now. There's the threat of tariffs, which it's unclear how that would affect inflation, but a lot of economists agree that it would. There are government spending cuts. You see what the DOGE, the Department of Government Efficiency, is doing. Whatever you feel about it politically, massive government spending cuts can impact inflation. So there's a lot that's going on right now that could change inflation between now and when we see the numbers that actually matter. So personally, I believe that inflation is going to stay a little bit on the elevated side. It might come down a little bit by the third quarter, but I am predicting now, given the inflation data that we just saw, and my previous projection was for another 2.5% cost of living adjustment. I'm going to bump that up by a couple of percentage points based on the recent CPI data, a little bit more aggressive than the Senior Citizens League is predicting. I say 2.7% will be the cost of living adjustment this year. So hopefully you all found that informative. Please leave me any questions you might have. I love talking about Social Security. I cover it all the time. I'll do my best to get to any questions individually. Leave comments for other people, or just if you like the video. And please hit subscribe to my channel, and I will see you next time. I want to thank The Motley Fool for sponsoring this video. The Motley Fool is a company that provides investing insight and stock recommendations for investors of all skill sets and risk levels. You all know how much I love researching new stocks and trying to find the next best investments. So I'm proud to partner with The Motley Fool to bring you 10 stock picks from their popular product, Stock Advisor. Stock Advisor has beaten the market more than 5 times. Go to fool.com/Frankel to get your 10 stock picks now. The Motley Fool Stock Advisor returns are 914% as of January 7th, 2025, and are measured against the S&P 500 returns of 174% as of January 7th, 2025. So thanks for sticking around. I want to talk about one more thing that people need to know about Social Security right now that has to do with your benefits going up. So let me share my screen real quick. So the Social Security Fairness Act, it was signed into law during the final weeks of the Biden administration and will increase Social Security benefits for over 3.2 million people. It eliminated some provisions. The details aren't terribly important. I did a whole video on it if you're really interested in what it specifically did. But generally, if you've had a job in your life and you did not pay Social Security tax for that and get a pension from it, a lot of government jobs fall in this category. The Social Security Fairness Act could increase your Social Security benefits. So the law is retroactive and applies to all the benefits received after December 2023. So if you've been receiving benefits for at least a year, you'll get some nice back pay once this goes into effect. The average person will get about $360 more per month, but some will get an additional $1,000 or more every month. It depends on your situation. The downside is it will take some time to implement this. There's no time frame for benefit increases right now. Social Security Administration is finalizing its plan, and it says it could take over a year to fully adjust benefits and make back payments, but hopefully it will be worth the wait if you qualify.